In the United States alone, we waste about 92 billion pounds of food. That translates to almost $500 million a year, not to mention the environmental impact that poses. Today, we're going to talk with somebody who left a career in AI to work on making the world a more sustainable place. So stay tuned. Today, I'm talking with Manali Yavatkar, founder and CEO of Palm. She has created a smart appliance for compost collection, which sold out in just a day on Kickstarter. Palm Bin preps food waste for nutrient-rich black gold compost, collecting food scraps for composting without the smell and mess. It does this all while maintaining the moisture and microbes in the food. Its unique cooling tech uses thermoelectric semiconductors to keep food scraps cold, which stops the odor-causing bacteria. So let's talk with Manali about composting and how her design takes the challenges out of home composting. Welcome, Manali.
Thanks, Chris. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you. I think this is a cool topic, and it's something I've wanted to do myself for a long time. But like you address, with your product, some of the logistics of it are kind of, a little difficult. I love the idea of, composting, but one of the challenges I've always had is I'm in the Midwest here, and we don't necessarily have the sort of composting infrastructure that you have out in the West Coast. And when we were talking earlier, you did give me tips on the fact that I actually do have some of that. So I'm excited to hear that, and maybe we can fill other people in on how that all goes down. But before we get into all that, could you have kind of an interesting journey, because right now, the tech industry is sort of imploding and everything's going crazy. And, the only thing that anybody wants to talk about is AI or cybersecurity. And you were, an AI developer, and you're like, in this hot market, let me get out of here and go do something else. So what led to that decision?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was working as an ML engineer at a healthcare startup, and I actually really loved it. So it wasn't the work that I was doing. It wasn't like I didn't enjoy my work or I didn't think it was challenging. It was more so that I saw just a different opportunity, and the opportunity presented it to myself through my own experience. So I moved to San Francisco. I started composting for the first time, and this is when I started going through all these problems, right? Like the smell, the mess, the flies, the having to empty my food waste bin that's in my kitchen all the time. And it was just a terrible experience. And that's what sort of prompted me to ask, why can't this be better? And is there already a solution out there? So it was that opportunity, that personal experience, and then also looking at where we are in the world, what's happening with climate change. This is food waste is a huge problem. And I've always been very passionate about sustainability. So it was kind of like a no-brainer. I was doing interesting work as an ML engineer, but I thought I could have more of an impact, both personally and from an environmental standpoint, by pursuing this idea and increasing participation in composting, really getting people to do it.
Well, it's interesting. This is sort of a definitely, it sounds like a passion project for you. And I think that's very cool. And I think that, it's interesting. We seem to be entering an era where that matters more to people. And I think that, you're very symptomatic of what's going on in the tech space right now, where people are really looking for purpose. And with this sort of things kind of getting more difficult, employment getting a little uglier in the tech space, I think a lot of people are going, why am I doing this? And why don't I spend my talents doing something that's going to benefit people, right? Is that kind of your thinking too?
Exactly. And purpose is so important, right? You want to feel good about what you're doing because you're spending majority of your time working. Whatever career you're in, you're spending majority of your time there. And so purpose is very important. But I also think, that's also a privilege, being able to, pursue something that gives you purpose is also a privilege because you're giving up something that's a sure thing that's going to give you a paycheck.
I mentioned in the intro that, there's 90 billion pounds of food waste or something like that, 92 billion pounds. And, we have a garbage disposal here, and I know, like, a lot of
Yes.
what should be composted ends up going down the garbage disposal. I know that makes the water very nutrient rich, which causes algae blooms and like all sorts of unfortunate outcomes. But that's just that's like the tip of the iceberg of like the problem with food waste, right? Because
Right.
one, it takes an enormous amount of energy to produce food, right? And the dollar amount. I mean, I saw something around nearly $500 billion or something of waste annually, right? Could you speak to like some of the environmental impacts of food waste?
In terms of food waste and it ending up in a landfill. So disposal of food waste has major environmental impact, right? Like if you put your food waste down your disposal, depending on your waste treatment plant, it's either going to end up in the ocean or most likely it's going to actually be pulled out and sent to a landfill. And, same thing, if you put your food waste in the trash, it's going to end up in a landfill. And the problem with that is food waste in a landfill doesn't get access to oxygen because landfills are very compact. Everything is like very compacted
Right.
and there's no oxygen flow. So when food waste breaks down anaerobically without oxygen, it produces methane, which is a greenhouse gas that's 80 times more potent than carbon dioxide. And that's a massive problem. And actually, the UN says that reducing methane emissions is the number one way to slow climate change.
Yeah.
So methane emissions are a huge problem. So that's one issue with putting food waste in landfills. And the other issue is food waste has a lot of nutrients, right? It's food.
Right.
So you're essentially taking those nutrients and you're throwing them away. And those nutrients are never finding their way back to the soil. So we have another issue that's happening, which is we don't have topsoil. We're running out of topsoil. Topsoil is like nutrient rich. We need topsoil to grow nutrient rich food.
Right.
And we only have about 60 years of topsoil left.
Wow.
Because we're just throwing away all these nutrients. So composting is super important because it diverts food waste from landfills and it returns those nutrients back to the soil.
Well, and if you're not returning those nutrients back to the soil, then you have to add in like nitrogen and things like that through fertilizers,
Yes.
which are in and of themselves problematic, right?
Yes, exactly. And so compost provides those nutrients and it actually reduces the need for pesticides. So it actually makes the microbes that it generates in the soil actually makes plants more resistant to diseases. So you don't need to use pesticides in the same way, which obviously have huge environmental impacts. It increases your soil's ability to retain moisture. So you need less water, which we all know we're running out of water as well.
Right.
And it prevents soil erosion. There's just a host of benefits that it brings to soil. So that's why I think, everyone should compost their food waste.
Yeah, no, you're making a pretty strong case for it. So you mentioned that you moved to San Francisco. You started composting because they have the green bin composting out there, which we don't have here. We have a green bin, but it's yard waste. And you found some problems with the process. Could you speak to some of the challenges you saw with the products that were on the market and like what was it you wanted to fix?
Just to give everybody context, in San Francisco and a lot of cities and more cities, we have a green bin where you're supposed to put your food waste in that bin and then your city will go and compost it for you. So people just have to collect their food waste in a countertop bin in their kitchen. And that is where the majority of the problems happen. So your food waste is sitting at room temperature. It gets stinky. It attracts flies. You have to empty it all the time because it's smelling. And the compostable bags will break down pretty quickly. So you have like a mess of food in there that gets really gross that you have to clean out.
Right.
So the solutions that exist today are, regular bins that either have really tight seals, so they keep all of the odors inside the bin. So
Until you
what that
open
means
it.
is exactly. So you open it, you get hit in the face with some nasty odors.
Right.
And, a couple fruit flies coming out of there too. So that's not a great solution. The other type of bin has a carbon filter. So it's trying to filter the odors as the air. So it usually has some like air holes, and so it wants, it wants some air, but it's like basically filtering out the odors as it comes out. And those are not very effective. And you have to replace that carbon filter pretty regularly. So that becomes an issue. And the carbon filter is also a great breeding ground for fruit flies, for their eggs.
Great.
So a lot of people have issues with that as well.
Yeah, fruit flies are the worst. The worst. They drive you nuts.
Yes.
I do have a quick fix for fruit flies, by the way. And I'm just going to throw this one in. I take little bowls and I put like apple cider vinegar in them. And then I cover them with plastic and I poke holes in the top and I just leave them on the counter and they fly in there and die. And it's the only thing that I've ever tried that works. So that's just a little tip.
That's great. And it's all natural. I love it.
But the better way to do it is to not breed them in the first place in your carbon filters of your composting unit.
Yes, exactly.
So tell me a little bit, like how does composting work? We throw, and you can't compost everything, right? I mean, you're not throwing meats and things in there, right? I mean, what constitutes compostable stuff?
Yeah, so you can actually, you can compost meat.
Oh, really?
And so that's the better thing about municipal curbside composting. So when your city takes your food waste and composts it at a facility, they typically accept meat, bones, basically anything that's organic, because they have a process where the piles get to a certain temperature that kills any sort of pathogens.
Oh.
So if you're doing backyard composting, you typically don't want to put meat in there because they don't get hot enough. But if you're doing municipal composting where there's a facility your food waste is going to, you can absolutely add meat. Basically anything organic. So I put my dog's hair in the compost, like you cut your nails, your fingernail clippings, like you can put that in the compost. Like anything that is organic can go in there.
Can you compost organic diapers?
That is a great question. So it depends on what they're made out of. Typically you don't want to compost. So a lot of compost facilities don't accept feces.
Right. Well, I mean, I would imagine E. coli outbreaks, would be a little scary.
Exactly.
The reason I bring that up is because, obviously that's a huge landfill problem.
Right.
Right. And one of the things that I noticed about your product that it sort of reminds me of when my kids were in diapers and we had those bins that had sealable bags, so you didn't get that odor, when you take it out. But we'll get to that because I think that's an interesting part of the design. All right, so you can compost anything with municipal composting. That's totally new to me. I had no idea about that. That's I'm learning something new every day. When the process goes, you have it on your counter. You put the food in there, and it has to have air and maintain a certain temperature to compost, or how does it go from there? Feeling like the second you scrape it off the plate, what happens? Yeah,
you scrape it off the plate. You put it in your countertop bin. It sits there. It'll start breaking down because it's at room temperature. It'll start breaking down, and that's what is creating the smells. So basically, you're having bacteria that's growing because it's at room temperature. And that bacteria is actually what's creating the smell and attracting the flies and all of that. And your compostable liner will start breaking down because it breaks down at a specific temperature and moisture level. So you're hitting that temperature level. You're definitely hitting the moisture level with your food waste. So your compostable liner is going to start breaking down. And by the time you empty it, it's probably going to be a mess in there. From there, you drop it in your curbside green bin. Your city will pick it up. It will take it to a compost facility. And then the composting process actually requires more than people think. It's not just food waste. So you have to add brown matter. So composting requires a ratio of green matter to brown matter. So green matter is like nitrogen based and it's food waste. And then brown matter is carbon based. And that's something like cardboard or like leaves or sawdust. So you have to have the right ratio. So at the compost facility, they're going to add that brown matter. Then they're going to make sure you have the right moisture level, which is 40 to 60% moisture. And then they're going to basically create a pile and let it heat up and then aerate the pile. So make sure there's oxygen going through that pile.
You mentioned that, like with the meats and things like that, the commercial or the municipal composting facilities, they are at a higher temperature. Do they actually heat the compost, or is that just a natural process getting the mixture right?
It's just a natural process, actually. Yeah. So the microbes that are actually doing the composting and breaking down the food waste, they generate heat. And so they're generating the heat, and that heat is just helping the process along. And it's just a whole little symbiotic system.
Now, is it like, making spirits or, brewing beer where you have to have like a certain microbe mix, or is it just the naturally occurring microbes, or do they add things in?
You do need the right microbes, but they're in the food waste. So you don't need to actually add them.
Interesting. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that like I was kind of shocked by, because I'm like, we were talking about, and you're telling me about these wonderful, green bins San Francisco has, and I've seen pictures of them. They're like half the size of the regular bins, it looks like, some of them, and they're kind of petite big bins.
Yes.
But you said that, like, in my area, and I don't even know how you knew, like, off the top of your head, which I was wildly impressed by. Because I live in a Chicago suburb, and you're like, oh yeah, there's this composting, but apparently there's a lot of like kind of independent composting facilities that you can sign up for that can do kind of curbside pickup for you, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, if your city doesn't provide it as a service, part of your trash pickup, you can sign up for a private company that will actually pick up your food waste, compost it for you, and then some of them actually give you compost. So in the spring, when you're doing your gardening, you can ask for some compost and they'll drop it off. So you get to actually use the compost that you've created, which is really cool.
I love that idea. I mean, because I love gardening. I mean, my dog has destroyed, and his friends have destroyed my garden. But we just put in some very high raised beds that they can't, pee on, basically. Yeah. And so that need for good compost, is there. And like to take the old stuff out and bring the new stuff back as something you could use. That would be amazing. So like, where would somebody go to find, if there's something local to them?
Yeah. So, I mean, Google is a great resource.
I mean, is there a good resource besides just asking you?
Not currently. And I'm actually trying to create that resource. So,
that's a good one.
So we're actually creating a compost service lookup tool, essentially. So you can just enter your zip code and then figure out what your options are. So a lot of people don't actually know. They may live in an area with municipal curbside composting, but it's something you have to opt into. And people just don't know that exists. So there's not one good resource out there right now to actually find these things. So we're trying to create that. And every municipality, every private company may have different requirements about what you can and cannot put in their bin. So some may require you to have a specific certified compostable bag, and they only accept those, or, so we want to keep that information on our website as well. So when you put in your zip code, you can get all the information in one place.
And so I guess if somebody is a composting facility and they want to get on your list, how should they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so email us at hello@palmlabs.co.
I'll put a little link here somewhere for that and in the show notes.
Perfect.
The composting bin that you've got is kind of unique. Because it's solving some special problems that you wanted to solve for. It's kind of just a passion project, sort of a personal project for you in that regard. So could you speak to, like, because the product's beautiful, and I'll put a picture up here, for people to take a look at what the product looks like. I mean, it's a beautiful product. I mean, it's going to look great on your countertop. I mean, there's obviously a great amount of industrial design that went into, putting this all together. But you've got some, as I mentioned in the intro, you've got some unique technology in here that's kind of helping it be a more functional piece of your kitchen. Could you speak to all the things that went into, creating this product?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I mean, first off, we wanted to solve the main issues people are having, which is smell, the flies, and the breakdown of these compostable bags. And then,
Right.
those things basically cause you to have to empty your kitchen bin frequently, multiple times a week. So we wanted to solve for that as well. And so
Right.
the easy way to solve for this is to keep your food waste cold. That bacteria, that stinky bacteria, is not going to grow. It can't grow. So you're not just, like the other bins, you're not just masking the odor or containing the odor, you're preventing that odor from even being created. So we wanted to create a bin that can keep your food waste cold. So you don't have to put your food waste in the fridge or the freezer and use valuable space. We wanted to be very
Right.
user-friendly, very accessible, very convenient. And so having it on your countertop right there in front of you every time you're going to scrape your plate is, makes it very, very convenient and easy. So that cooling
Right.
is kind of like our bread and butter and what solves the majority of these pain points. It also prevents your compostable liner from breaking down because that liner breaks down at a certain temperature and moisture level. So you're going to hit that moisture level, but you're not going to hit that temperature threshold. And so your liner will actually stay intact.
You kind of are using, very cool tech to keep it cool. Could you talk about how you're actually doing that?
So we're using thermoelectric cooling, which is a different technology than what your fridge uses. It's a lot less energy intensive, and it's much smaller. Like has a much physical footprint as well. But basically, it uses a Peltier module, which is this really cool thing that you send a current through it, and one side gets really hot and one side gets really cold, and those are semiconductors that do that. So we're using that to essentially cool the whole bin.
That's cool because I remember when those semiconductors kind of came out, and it was this is how we're going to cool computers in the future, and all that, and that was a very exciting and promising technology. It's interesting to see something like that applied in a different context here, and the thing that's nice about it is cooling something is very energy intensive typically.
Right.
I imagine this device doesn't require much energy to run at all, right?
Yeah, it's essentially it's about like 0.4 kilowatts a week. So that's like a light bulb in your house. It's really not a lot of energy. And we've really optimized the cooling. So it's not running all the time. It runs only when necessary, and we can adjust the current going to the module as well. So we can really optimize for efficiency.
Another aspect of this, like cleaning this thing, is very easy because it's all dishwasher safe stuff, right?
Yeah. So it has an inner caddy that's removable. So you can transport your food waste to your green bin really easily. And that caddy, as well as it has this like ring inside to catch any food. So basically anything that touches food waste is removable and dishwasher safe. So we've tried to make the cleaning process really easy as well.
That's got to be nice because I can imagine that gets just pretty rank after a while if you don't clean it.
Yeah, and we actually have a piece on the lid, like the inside of the lid, that's removable and dishwasher safe as well. So if you really fill it, your lid could get dirty. And that was a pain point for me as well. And in our user testing, so we actually created like a removable part of the lid that is dishwasher safe. So
yeah, I wouldn't want to have to hand wash that, that.
Exactly. Or just, have to wipe it down with a cloth or anything like that.
The other aspect of this that I think is interesting is that one of your focuses, I know, is on building a product in a sustainable way. Could you speak to that aspect of it too?
We wanted to be very cognizant about the fact that we were creating a new product that people were buying. And we wanted to make sure that it's not going to end up in a landfill, right? We're trying to prevent your food waste from going to the landfill. We don't want to contribute and create another product in a landfill.
Right.
So that was super important to us. And what that meant was in the design process, we had to design for disassembly. So in order to provide, we have a repair program. In order to provide repairs, the product needs to be able to be disassembled. And a lot of electronics today are just glued together. It's like parts are just glued together and you have to break it basically in order to take it apart. We didn't want to do
Right.
that. So we designed it, we're using screws, we're using things. It's more expensive to do it that way because you have more parts. But that was super important to us. So we wanted to make sure that we incorporated that. And other thing is we're using sustainable materials where we can. So instead of, like a plastic insulation, we're using recycled cellulose, which is infinitely recyclable. So we can actually, create new insulation panels from old ones, which is great.
Yeah.
And then we're using, a bioplastic instead of 100% fossil fuel based plastic. And that bioplastic's also recyclable. So we not only have a repair program, we also have a take back program. So you use your bin for 8 years, 10 years, and you're done with it, you can send it back to us. We'll take it apart and we'll actually recycle the parts into new palm bins.
And so like recycling the bioplastics, is that different than trying to recycle other plastics? Because I know one of the challenges with recycling plastic is that it's a very energy intensive process. Do those bioproducts recycle easier?
It's still mechanical recycling. So you basically just grind it up and grind it up, you have to compound it and then you can reuse it. There are some bioplastics, and we're looking into these, for down the line that are also compostable at end of life. So it's just about doing you can't, those plastics you can't put in the dishwasher. So we can't use those for the dishwasher safe parts. But we're looking into it for the exterior. We just have to do some testing, and it's all about, doing the LCA analysis as well, which is something else that we're doing to really look at the life cycle.
I feel like we're getting very meta here with a compostable composter,
Yeah. Yes.
That's interesting. This is like the designing for sustainability. And I know that like, it's like you're kind of hitting on a lot of points here. It's like you've got, cool style, sustainability, sustainable manufacturing, but the other thing is, and like ease of use. And one of the things I know that like part of the ease of use is that you can put compostable bags into this so that like, you can just grab a bag and walk out with it. Right.
Yeah.
How does that work?
So we actually have our own bags, our own compostable bags, that are certified. So there's a lot of kind of greenwashing in the compostable bag industry. You can find a lot of bags on Amazon that are green, so they look like they would be compostable, but they are not. So we want to ensure that our customers have certified compostable bags. So we actually created our own that fit within our bins as well, because our bins have a pretty unique shape. So those bags will fit within our bins, fit really nicely, and are compostable. So we're also working on creating a new type of compostable liner made out of paper pulp. So that's another sort of like R&D project that we have in the works. But those paper pulp liners are just better because they break down faster. So compost facilities like them more. The problem with the compostable bags is that they take longer to break down. So that can affect the compost cycles at these facilities.
I would imagine if you're getting the compost back and you got a lot of green bags that haven't fully broken down, that would kind of suck.
Yeah, exactly.
I mentioned that you had this on Kickstarter and it sold out in a day. And I think right now you're like 530 some % of your goal. Could you talk about like the Kickstarter process and where you're at and like when you're actually going to be shipping all of these?
We completed our Kickstarter. It was like a 30-day campaign. Like you said, we hit our goal. We went over. So that was great. We are planning to ship to customers in December in time for Christmas.
Perfect.
That's the goal. And then we are still accepting pre-orders. So you can still pre-order. Right now, you can still pre-order on Kickstarter through their late pledge.
Okay.
We're going to have pre-orders on our website pretty soon here. We're just building out a new website, which is really exciting with that compost lookup tool. So that's super exciting, but that's kind of what's in the works for us.
Wow, that is exciting. So if one were to order now, and what I'll put your Kickstarter campaign address up here. It usually goes over here. You can never get the side right. I'll put it up there. And And so you can people can go and get to that Kickstarter. But if they're kind of signing up late, when do you think they're going to be looking to get it? Will they still be potentially getting it by Christmas? That seems like a lot of composters to make before Christmas.
Depending on when you order, if you order right now, you would still get it in time for Christmas.
Okay.
But depending on how many orders we get, that delivery might get pushed to January or February. So
that'd be a great problem for you to have, I assume.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you financing this purely through Kickstarter, or are you going to bootstrap this company? Are you going to look to raise seed money? Have you raised seed money? Like, how does it all work?
So we did do like a small friends and family to kind of kick us off. Kickstarter is obviously helping, but we are going to raise a pre-seed round here in the next few months, mostly from angels. So it'll be, a smaller round, but mostly from angels and micro VCs. And yeah, I mean, this is definitely like a product that we could potentially bootstrap. It's just about how fast do we want to move? We can move a lot faster with a little bit more money, and the market opportunity is right now. More cities are implementing curbside composting. New York City is just about to get it in October. All of Manhattan is going to have curbside composting, which is incredible.
Yeah, that's definitely a target to shoot for.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so if you're an accredited investor and you want to, get in on the composting rage, here you go. They just reach out to you at the same address?
Yeah, that would be great.
What's next for you and for Palm? Are you going to add in AI features to this?
That's a great question.
The great convergence.
So we do have impact tracking, right? So the bins actually do constantly measure the amount of food waste that you're adding and tell you your impact. So tell you how much food waste you're diverting from landfills, how much methane you're preventing from going to the atmosphere. And that's actually pretty interesting data, because a lot of states now are enacting laws that require food waste to be diverted. So basically municipalities have to comply and demonstrate that compliance in some way. That data can actually be very useful for not only compliance, but also planning these compost facilities, because waste is sort of like a black box. No one really knows how much waste is being generated, how much food waste is being generated versus, other just, solid waste. So having that data is actually pretty interesting. We're going to look into how we can help with compliance there. And then the other thing is, this is like a direct to consumer product, but apartment buildings have to comply with these laws as well. So we definitely are looking to partner with apartment buildings to help increase participation in composting. And I think that's a really good market, because if you live in an apartment and your food waste bin smells, you're going to smell it everywhere in your apartment.
Yeah, that would not be good in a big apartment building. I think I've been in that apartment building where that's been happening before.
And also emptying your bin, multiple times a week can be a hassle when you're in an apartment building and you have to take an elevator to get to the trash room. So creating a better experience is basically the only way we're going to get people to participate in compost. So I think partnering with apartment buildings is also in our
and I could see the municipalities. I mean, my municipality sends around like, hey, you can buy these light bulbs, or you can do this, like there's all sorts of offers and discounted offers and things like that. Buy them in bulk.
Exactly. And rebate programs. So a lot of cities provide rebate programs for compost, mostly for compost, like if you want to backyard compost for like a tumbler. But some of them actually are starting to provide rebates for countertop bins as well. So we could get on our roadmap is getting approved for these rebates as well.
Do you think that you'll also be making like even larger ones for maybe more of an industrial use, like an office or a restaurant kind of setting?
Yeah, exactly. So larger versions of the Palm Bin for, the apartment building's trash room or an office space. So that's definitely in the works as well.
It's such cool stuff. I really admire the fact that you kind of left the hot market right now to go, follow your passion and do something that's like making the world a better place. I mean, I feel like, I'm more of a pessimist in the space of sort of the climate change world right now. And I think that the evidence seems to me that we've kind of blown past what the salvageability of it all is. And we need to like start looking at more mitigating, factors too. But I mean, like every bit we can do to help, either delay that happening or like get us to a point where we can fix it once we've kind of stabilized it, I think is super important. And I very much appreciate that people like you are out there doing this. So thank you on behalf of me and the planet.
Yeah, I mean, I think like there's so many solutions that we have to help reduce methane emissions, carbon emissions that we know work. We just need to implement them. That's kind of the problem is we have these solutions. Like we should be also, trying to find new solutions as well, but we already have a lot of solutions and the implementation is just what we're failing at right now. So
yeah, we've been failing at that stuff for a long time.
Yes.
Which is really frustrating, but here we are. But at least we have people like you working to make it better. So I just want to thank you so much for doing what you're doing. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing your product. I'm excited, for when it starts shipping in December. And good luck with everything.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was great chatting with you.
Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And if you could, give it a like, think about subscribing, share this with a friend, and I will see you in the next one.